Thank you, Scott. Hello and welcome. I'm providing a warm welcome in more ways than one here to our meeting this evening. Nice to see a lot of folks here joining us this evening. So I'm officially calling to order the business meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission for Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if Minister Carissa Langley is here. Oh, yeah, there we go. All right. So we are honored to have Minister Carissa Langley from Mount Zion here with us, and she will be providing an invocation. So I'm going to ask everybody to please stand for that invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this gift of today, and we thank you for this opportunity for this meeting this evening. We thank you for the gifts of each and every one of our city commissioners, the community residents, and the guests that are present. We thank you for their gifts, their talents, and their experience that they bring into this room. But Father, we also welcome and we thank you for your presence. And we ask that you would lead, guide, and direct the discussions and the decisions that are made today. That our streets would be safer, that our community residents would be healthier and happier, and that we would experience how good and how pleasant it is for our brethren to dwell together in unity. We give you the praise and the glory. It is in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Minister Langley, for providing some words for us to start our meeting this evening. I recognize that we do have some individuals who are here tonight. I might recognize as guests, but I think they're going to be participating in a presentation on something that's before us, so I won't go through that at this time. So, commissioners, you have the agenda before you. Is there anything that you would like moved on the agenda? Seeing nothing here from the commission. Now is the opportunity for anyone who's here in the chambers to move an item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Is there anyone in the chambers that would like to see such an item moved? All right, so just as a reminder, the consent agenda items are passed without discussion. Just as a reminder, there will be an opportunity, obviously, to speak on any of those during public comments. All right, seeing no changes, the agenda stands as it is then. Next, communications. DCM? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, under communications, city staff would like to give a presentation talking about our street networks and are basically entitling it Streets for All, Creating a Connected City. We just have a lot going on here with our street networks, and as we had a very full conversation at your 5 o'clock meeting, we have a lot of topics going on. So we do know that this is a topic that needs some dedicated time, but we didn't have enough to have a full meeting on it tonight. So we want to give you this presentation. So I would like to call up staff. We're going to have a tag team of staff doing this tonight. We're going to be joined tonight by Rebecca Kick, our Community Planning and Economic Development Director, Christina Anderson, who is our City Planner, Anthony Ladd, I believe, yes, our Public Works Division Manager, and Dennis Randolph, city's traffic engineer. And before they start off, I'm going to give a little shout out to Mr. Randolph. There was a press release from the Environmental Protection Agency this afternoon, and Mr. Randolph was reappointed to an advisory board for the EPA today. This is his second two-year term. It is called the Environmental Financial Advisory Board, and it provides advice to the EPA administration and the agency's programs and regional offices on innovative ways to lower costs while increasing investments in environmental and public health protection. A priority of the board is to support the agency's investments through the bipartisan infrastructure law to advance progress on key priorities, including uplifting underserved communities, tackling the climate crisis, and protecting public health. So it's great to have Dennis be on that national board for the EPA, but wait, there's more. He just recently finished up a 6-year term with the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council for the EPA also. So just to give you a little background on some of the other work that city staff do working with their colleagues around the nation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to this group to talk about our streets.
Yeah, yay, Dennis. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, DCM Chamberlain, and City Attorney Robinson. We are here tonight, and we'll go as quickly as we can. However, there's a lot of information to share with you about our street network, and specifically what we're calling Streets for All, Creating a Connected City. And this is, we're going to talk about exactly where this area is located in a little bit, but we're talking about streets in downtown, leading to downtown, leading from downtown to our institutions and our adjacent neighborhoods. And since 2018, I think we've been using this as our starting picture, because this is what streets used to be. It has ample space for movement, whether you are, in this case, horse and buggy, bike, ped, or the trolley of the day. But it also had plenty of space for commerce, plenty of space for gathering and socialization. And somewhere along the line, we stopped creating these kind of streets. And we're going to talk about some of those impacts that you can see both in Kalamazoo and across the country tonight. And we started to create streets that were just streets for cars. And that's where we're going to start the presentation this evening.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's the first time I've had an opportunity to meet with you all, and I'm talking about one of my favorite subjects, streets, and in particular, some of the problems that we're going to be dealing with here in Kalamazoo over the next few years. And it's a problem actually I've run into over the last 50 years of my career in almost every stop that I've made in Michigan and a couple other states. And there was a time when streets were made for cars. It wasn't always that way, as the first picture showed, but it happened primarily after World War II, as the economy geared up and we came into an interesting time, and the interstate system was built. And to accompany the interstate system, highway departments pretty much across the nation looked at moving vehicles fast and moving a lot of vehicles as fast as they could. In Michigan, the highway department came to Kalamazoo, and in October 1965, they converted a number of streets in the city to one-way operation. They also did it in a couple other cities, Port Huron, Lansing, where I was city engineer. I had to live with them there. And Pontiac, Saginaw, you see them around the state, and you see the same problems, and you see the results of a drive, again, to forget about people and to turn streets primarily into ways to move people fast. The problem with moving people fast is that it's not the safest way for the rest of the community. I've got a chart, and it's small, and they're dots, but the idea behind the chart is this. The faster you have cars moving, the more likely a pedestrian can be killed or the more likely that a pedestrian can have a serious injury to themselves. And when you have that kind of problem, especially in a city, and I'm out in the country, I've run country roads, sometimes the picture's a little different. But in a city where you want people around your streets and you know they're going to be on your streets, that particular curve is a problem. And down in the lower left-hand corner, you see a cover for a report the Highway Department did right after they made the conversion. I've got a copy of that report if you ever want to get bored. But what the report brags about is the fact that once the conversion was made, and in 1966 when they did after data, that the Highway Department had managed to decrease the number of stops that it took for people to drive through downtown, and they had increased the speed, the average speed of cars, 11 miles an hour. And you can see by that curve, you move up the curve with faster speeds, there's more likelihood of people being hurt and killed. You can go out today on Michigan and Kalamazoo, and you know it is just a challenge to walk across those streets, even at the signals. And that reflects what that curve shows right there. So one of the main things we're interested in is safety. That's always, safety is tied to a couple other things we're going to talk about, but for me, an old traffic engineer, how many crashes we have, and you can see this is 10 years of crash data in the downtown area where we're going to be working on streets over the next 10 years. And there are a lot of crashes, primarily because of speed. 30% of all the crashes that happen in the city are directly attributed to speed by the police officers who write the reports up. Another 20% is a result of, has a major causal factor of speed. Cars hitting you at a stopped signal is a speed problem. That is one of the main problems we want to address. But even more importantly, at least for me, I think, is looking at what happened with pedestrians and bike crashes. And on an average, we have about 60 pedestrian and bike crashes a year in the city. That's out of a total of about 3,100 crashes a year total. So it may seem small, but you have to remember when somebody's on a bike or pedestrian, they get hit by a car, the chance of them being killed or injured seriously is significantly greater than if they're in a car somewhere. So what we're trying to do is deal with that particular problem. I think the other part to go along with the safety, the bare crash problem, is the idea of livability. This chart comes from the state of Michigan, but it also is from the Environmental Protection Agency, their environmental justice monitoring system that they have. And it shows you areas that have been traditionally underserved, environmental justice areas. And if you look at that map, you see the same streets that we have these crash problems on encompass those particular areas. How do you make those areas livable for people and make it safe for people? And that is I think the two-pronged approach that is first in my mind. Again, there's other ones I know that Rebecca's going to talk about, but I always like to start out with the health and safety of people, and we'll have a few more items about that in a second. The big problem we have, though, is if you look at this particular chart, is that there are a lot of cars that want to move east-west through downtown Kalamazoo. 60,000 cars a day. They're spread over a number of streets. One of the problems we have is that we still want those people to come through town. We want them to stop. We want them to shop. We want them to live. But it's a lot of cars, and we have to figure out how to do it safely and at reasonable speeds. So that's important. Also, as we do our conversion work, we have to figure out where to move the 13,000 cars on Kalamazoo while we rebuild Kalamazoo, or the 17,000 cars on Michigan. Where do we put them in the meantime? And Anthony will talk about that in a minute.
So another aspect of the streets that we want to talk about is the economic impact. So in our, and this is kind of talking about world as it is, and then we're going to talk about world as it could be. So world as it is, in 2017, we did a downtown retail study. And that study noted that the downtown retail market is currently underperforming, but by non-market conditions. So the conditions are there for us to have a really robust small business market. However, those non-market conditions include difficult navigation in and around our shopping areas, outdated parking management, and limited marketing and lack of relevance to university students. Now, when we think about the difficult navigation in and around our shopping areas, we've created additional barriers for motorists and pedestrians that what could be an easy trip becomes a frustrating one. And many of these impediments, which have been identified in various studies dating all the way back to the 1980s, and most recently in our 2009 and 2017 comprehensive plans and master plans, the study area of downtown could actually be supporting about 100,000 square feet of retail. And the study back then also said it could be generating as much as $51 million in sales if the city were to implement the following physical and policy improvements. Number one, return all streets to two-way traffic and implement traffic calming measures. Expand our on-street parking in the downtown, especially in and near the mall. Install parking meters along all commercial streets and offer 2 hours free parking in public parking garages. Develop business recruitment plans and develop market-based merchandising plans for the study area. These are all initiatives that we began working on and vetting as we started to look at our strategic vision. So we started to think about the world as it could be, and we posed a lot of questions to our community. And with the strategic visions of connected city and complete neighborhoods and improving our public spaces, we realized that it takes a lot of cross-departmental planning and coordination to complete the community's largest visionary projects. And so that's why the four of us have been collaborating over the last several years to think about how will we plan and how will we plan responsibly to respond to what we heard through Imagine Kalamazoo. Imagine Kalamazoo input created a dynamic shift from the planning of cars and traffic to the planning of people and places. If wide, fast streets and acres of parking lots made a great downtown, yeah, we'd be amazing right now, right? But we know that that's not the truth. We want our streets to be bursting at the seams with residents, commerce, and life. We know that we have a lot of work to do to be sure that our existing businesses, residents, and neighborhood connections are stable while we're trying to grow. And that we have a lot of core work that needs to be accomplished to bolster this new commerce and connectivity to our neighborhoods and be able to have safe travel in all of the modes. So what else have we changed? I've mentioned to you guys in several different presentations in the past that about 25% of our land in the city of Kalamazoo is right-of-way. So sidewalks, streets, 25% of our land. And if we did not start to shift our thinking to create a better city for people, we're going to keep putting people and business at bay while we allow all of our money and time to be spent on just the roadway. When the system is more balanced between all the modes of travel, safety, and place, we begin to create those vibrant neighborhood connections. With these new community values in place, there was only one big decision left on the table: how to get the streets converted to two-way.
So in order to take this vision and these ideas and start to begin to make that a reality, the city reached a deal with the Michigan Department of Transportation that was finalized and took effect in 2019 to effectively take ownership over the state trunk lines that had ran through the city. It consists of approximately 32 center lane miles of road, some of the busiest and widest roads that we have in the city. In addition to that, the right-of-way on either side, taking ownership of that, and probably, I think, 40 or 50 new traffic signals. So there was a lot of infrastructure to take on, but it also was the necessary step to make that dream a reality, to put that into motion so that the city could begin to return these streets or use these streets for its intended purposes, for the city's purposes, the best way it saw fit.
For all the good ideas that we have about livability and safety and economic development, one of the stumbling blocks you have with this type of project, and I just lived through 11 years of it in the Kansas City area where I did a two-way conversion project for the city of Grandview there, is the philosophy of what streets are for and how you use them. And I think what I've seen, and Thursday is my 51st anniversary as a traffic engineer, so I've seen a lot. But the thing that pleases me the most, I think, is that there's been a change in the way traffic engineers, the people that have to justify this stuff, or you have to justify this stuff too, and the ones who are going to guide the changes, they've changed the way they look. And the ITE Journal, which is our professional journal for the Institute of Transportation Engineers, if you look at the journal now, all they talk about is sustainability, livability, equity, environmental justice. 10 years ago, you didn't hear that type of talk in the business. That's the most positive thing I've come across. And I think what's important about it is that there's still a lot of citizens, folks out there who drive on the streets every day and say, what are you doing to this? You're slowing me down. Why? But I think having the industry, having the technical professionals supporting this, understanding the importance and what good you can do for a community is one of the most important things that had to happen, and it has happened. And it makes our job to convert streets a lot easier.
So we're building off generational change in the industry. We're building off of Imagine Kalamazoo, and we're building off the jurisdictional transfer, which was the major decision point really in what we were going to do with our streets moving forward. So in 2019, we started an engagement process building on everything we heard to start to get down to greater detail. And we did a series of meetings, starting with the KIA. We did a hands-on design your own street and talk about how you make choices based on the space that you have and who you need to serve in those spaces. And we did walking audits and we did bike audits. And we took all this information from this process. We ran it past a consultant team of traffic engineers to understand what is feasible from what we heard from the community in terms of the street network, what works, what doesn't work. And what we learned is we can make changes, right? And a lot of it, we have a lot of options. It's not just that we can make a change. We have a lot of different options, including, two-way traffic on Kalamazoo and Michigan and South and Lovell. And we'll talk about West Nitcham Park in a little bit. We know that there'll be some hot spots, particularly during peak hour for vehicles, but the name of this project is Streets for All. And so, yes, vehicle traffic may slow down. However, we are increasing comfortability and safety for all other users, and that's what starts to balance everything out. At the end of this process, this is the type of information we received. This is not a construction drawing. This is barely even a full street section from one edge of the right-of-way to the other. But what we got was, here's the approximate space that we can use for travel lanes and for vehicles. If you're going two-way, you have 2 lanes in either direction, 1 lane in either direction. And as a result, what does that yield for pedestrians, for commerce, for on-street parking, and bicycles? We immediately followed this up with our street design manual. And this is an awesome project that we haven't talked about enough with this commission. The street design manual does a lot of things, but importantly, it sets a process for staff internally to be reviewing street projects to make sure that it's aligned with Imagine Kalamazoo, aligned with our complete streets policy, which the City Commission approved in 2018-ish. And it sets us up for success It brings a group of multiple departments, including those that are in front of you tonight, along with Parks and Rec and Economic Development, to make sure that the streets, when they're put into our capital improvements plan, they've been thought through. We've thought about who those streets are serving, what needs to be incorporated into that street construction, so we're properly budgeting 5, 6, 7 years in advance, and not at the last minute when we hear, but wait, there's a senior center here, what about more pedestrian improvements? Having all that done up front.
I think the street design manual is one of the neatest documents I've ever seen in my work in transportation and engineering. It allows planners and engineers to work together. They have a common document that they can work with. And it allows us, again, to go into the next step where we combine a vision, because that's what you really need to get a project like this done. You need a picture. Somebody needs a picture in their mind of what the future is going to be. And then we need to turn it into reality using engineering. And we take a number of steps, and I don't have to go through those steps. You know what they are. I do want to mention, I add maintenance at the bottom, because once we build something, we really have to take care of it, and that we haven't always done well. But I also want to mention in item number 7, design. It's one line, but we've developed a process. In fact, we submitted as part of our raise grant application that we sent for the infrastructure bill, and we call it the Kalamazoo method. And what it involves within design is more than just looking at standards and looking at grades and all the traditional things you have to look at and you need to look at. But it also looks at, is the job ethical? Is there value in the job? There are all types of steps that we're going to go through to make sure the product that we get out of our projects are the best projects for the community to make it safe and livable. And that's what the real bottom line is. That's the bottom line that we haven't always addressed well.
So now we're really going to head into the world as it could be. As Imagine Kalamazoo joined land use and transportation to create a team of city staff dedicated to achieving these goals, we looked back through Imagine Kalamazoo and looked at how residents described their ideal neighborhood condition: calmed traffic, retail establishments, and a variety of housing, among other things. The Connected City is a framework that implements those connections and creates those inviting public places that improves the community and the environment. When we were, Dennis just mentioned the RAISE grant, which is a federal transportation grant made for us. The grant reads so much like what Kalamazoo is trying to do. It's incredible to work on this process with our team. And Imagine Kalamazoo fit so well into this framework. We wanted to share with you this matrix that shows how each of our goals for safe community, complete neighborhoods, connected city, environmental responsibility, inviting public spaces, and economic vitality was able to answer questions within this national grant so easily. And we feel really confident about how we can fund this project going forward.
And again, as we get into the project, we have to have, besides a vision, a number of goals that we want to attain. That's to make it best for the community. We want to make a more livable city. We want to slow cars down. I had a team out collecting speeds this week, and they clocked somebody going 75 miles an hour on Park. That's way too fast. But when you do projects like this, they're great for business and economic development. In Grandview, where I did this project, we had people coming into our city in anticipation. Once they knew the project had started, as we've started here, developers came into our city and started spending money to make new things for our community, the services our folks needed there, which is it was really gratifying for that to happen. We want a healthier city. Again, we can make it safer in terms of just crashes, but also we can have less air pollution. Managing traffic flow, instead of having cars going 75 and some going 10, they'll go a reasonable speed, 30, 35 miles an hour. That's when you get minimal air pollution. You also keep the noise down. And it's well known that noise compounds problems with air pollution. So by managing noise and speed, we can make folks healthier. And that is a big problem, especially in areas, underserved areas like we have that these roads cut through. We're going to have a more modern city. The fact is, we're going to have these streets around a long time during all of the 21st century. Hopefully, we can design them so that they could carry us into the next century also, which is my dream for my grandkids who live here. I want those streets to be good for them and for everyone else's grandkids. We're going to have new buildings and development. More folks living downtown, people living downtown. Less land used for street pavements for cars to speed on. And we can use it for other amenities, sidewalks, green areas, even maybe a little more development space for some folks. But we can make a modern city. We have to dream about what we want the city to look at for the rest of this century, not how it's looked back for the last 50 years.
So in that earlier economic development slide that we talked about, that was the impetus for us to start this journey. When we got the news, be sure that you fix your streets. And so we asked to have another retail study done, and we said, okay, so we're going to do this thing. Tell us what the economic impact would be when this is complete. And so if we make the changes we're talking through tonight, we could gain an additional $20 million in sales across the downtown, as well as a capacity for additional 52,000 square feet in commercial lease space. To draw a close economic connection, when the city of South Bend, Indiana converted their one-way network to two-way, they experienced growth in residential living space in their downtown, restaurants, retail, and office space, totaling over $600 million in investments. And South Bend has been a really great mentor through this process. As we have talked about what the potential economic impacts could be, we've also tried to look at the surrounding neighborhoods as well and how they can also benefit from the growth of downtown.
So continuing with that theme, I'm going to come back to that slide. In order to speak about, at a surface level, what we expect these impacts to be. Again, we want to make these streets people-centric. We want to increase the modes of traffic that are available and easy to use, from pedestrians, bicyclists, mass transit, and vehicles. We've talked about the environmental impact and the environmental benefits that come with these types of projects and the thought that we're putting behind each of our street projects in the development and design phases. We've talked about incorporating the community, connecting neighborhoods. Talked about creating resilient infrastructure and creating streets and just infrastructure in general, preparing for the next century, and making that something that's sustainable and resilient and that will work for our city in the future. I think as a network, though, it's important to kind of take a holistic view of the connectivity that's created once all these projects are finished, if anything's ever completely done. But once we get towards the end of this project, the network that'll be created, the ability for Kalamazoo to have a true Main Street coming to downtown, and the connectivity and the people that'll bring to this area. So we've talked a lot, or entirely almost, about our surface features and what will happen above ground. But it is worth mentioning, with each of these projects, when we take a look at a segment of road or an area in town, we're looking from well below the surface, up to even the tree canopy. So as we develop these projects and we are trying to incorporate all the benefits that are possible, we're going to be looking at utilities, things like our drinking water, stormwater, sanitary sewer, our fiber communications even, that run underground, some of which are the oldest infrastructure that we have in the city, obviously would be in our core downtown area. So just from an age and condition standpoint, the amount of development and capacity that has changed in the last 100 years, the increased rain and precipitation events that we see necessitate us to take this time, if we are doing these road projects, to look subsurface as well and prepare those utilities for the future.
What's important, I think, when we do the projects on Kalamazoo and downtown and Michigan, is that they aren't isolated from the rest of the community. And what you see happening around the rest of the city as we do street improvements, whether it's an overlay or a seal of some sort, you see us changing the markings on the street. We fit in bicycle lanes. We make accommodations for vehicles other than cars and trucks. And one of the things, and you'll see on the map that the system of bicycle lanes is expanding really rapidly. By the end of this summer, you're going to see a whole bunch of new lanes out there. We just painted some on Burdick this week. But you're going to see them everywhere. And some folks still say, well, why are you doing this? I never see anybody on a bicycle. Well, the fact is I wouldn't want to be on most streets without some type of lane, because you take your life in your hands. It's not traffic engineering, that's just my opinion. But what you'll see as we expand the network is more people will be out there on the streets. And again, we do have a lot of folks out there. I mentioned we have about 60 crashes a year between bicycles and pedestrians on our streets. So there are folks out there. They just need the facilities. And you'll see on our new system that we not only provide for those folks, but by narrowing lanes, by eliminating lanes, we also start slowing folks down. It's one of the best ways to slow a car down is to narrow a lane up a foot or two. And it really works, and it's been working for us around the city. So we know it's going to be. So we want, again, to make streets safer for everyone, being as inclusive as we can be, and also think about what is going to be happening as we go through this century and get into the next century.
Again, I think another thing that's important when we are looking at these streets holistically, taking everything to account, we are including our partners at Metro in the conversation every step of the way in our engagement process, through the design process. We're getting feedback. We want them to be a partner in this conversation with us. So in preparation for this presentation, we had kind of brainstormed of what they saw the benefit of from their network coming from these projects. And that came to additional bus stop locations and amenities, upgrading existing bus stops to ADA compliance, creating more connections and more areas of interest, more locations in general. As we create more of a network, these buses are going to be a lot more willing to navigate throughout the city, create more routes, more stops, and generating more users just in general. So to summarize the project, what we have here is kind of broken down the trunk lines plus south and level. broken up into construction years and phasing. I think the phasing of these streets is more important than necessarily construction years just yet being so far out. But a lot of this was, again, put into motion and made possible by the transfer agreement with the Department of Transportation. And the phasing was created, I guess, through the last couple of years in our preliminary design projects with our consultant engineers. And through this was just as important as anything else to get the phasing correctly, because once you start adjusting traffic flows and moving pieces of the puzzle, it becomes very important that you have a place for cars to go. So that's why you see, starting in Kalamazoo Avenue, in order to work on Kalamazoo Avenue and have that ready for two-way traffic so that we can switch to Michigan Avenue immediately following that project. So those streets work in tandem. We need to do both of those, not concurrently, but one after the other. From there, going on to South and Level will kind of be the next big projects, although we're anticipating we can start that process incrementally as funds allow. And then again, Christina's going to talk about West Nugent Park and the work that we're doing this year on that, as well as potential improvements down the road. And then, as you know, we have already started with Stadium Drive construction this year. I'm guessing that you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I promise we are in the home stretch. West Nugent Park. We started this process this time last year, right? We knew that West Nugent Park were unable to go two-way with this 10, 12-year work that we've started. That doesn't mean we can't treat West Nugent Park with the same vision that we're treating all of the other streets, which is streets for all, slower traffic, more comfortable travel for all users. So we did a community process. Here are some of the things that we heard in terms of level of comfortability on that street. From Dunkley in the North Side neighborhood all the way down to Crosstown in Vine. Where do residents cross? Where do they feel comfortable crossing? Where would they like to cross? We took that information and of course we weighed it against data. So we have 9 years of crash data. The circles represent vehicle crashes, and then the bike and pedestrian folks represent bike and pedestrian crashes. So we overlaid what we heard from the community, we overlaid the crash data, and came up with a plan for making improvements. Last fall, we started on the north side, and we created new crosswalks, signage, your speed radar signs, and that was the work that was done this fall. This summer, Vine will get the same treatment, south of downtown, crosswalks, signage. And then in the north side, starting wishful thinking, July 11th, there's going to be road work in the north side neighborhood that is going to end up with new travel lanes, right-sized travel lanes. We've talked a lot about how wide the travel lanes on these streets are, which is why we find people going 70 miles an hour. New size travel lanes, leaving space for bike lanes, and in many cases also leaving space for on-street parking. In Vine, we will do that same work next year. So this year we're going to do a pop-up bike lane so we can start to test and understand. And I want to say, I was going to say this at the end, but I think it's important to say now, and for anyone who is going to join us on Friday when we do our book club, Street Fight by Janet City Khan, one of the things she really talks about is, you look at cities like Copenhagen and you look at cities like New York, those things didn't happen overnight. They didn't just become pedestrian friendly. We all grew up, they're all experienced post-World War II and the prioritization of vehicles, but they had to make incremental changes to their street network, to their public places in order to get to where they are today. And, if you read the book, one of the things they talk about is how it took almost 10 years, but 10 years they doubled their bicycle traffic with their slow addition of a bicycle network, being thoughtful about where it goes and who it's serving. So this is all part of, a much larger picture that is coming.
So again, this process, this project has already began this year. with Stadium Drive construction. And you're starting to see that thought process played out into real time as we approach construction finishing in October. We took what was a 5-lane trunk line, and while keeping the 2 travel lanes in each direction, we were able to take essentially over a mile of center turn lane that had no real use other than it was just there, and able to create a concrete median island with grass and tree plantings. In addition, we took the north side of the road there from the shoulder north towards the university and created an 8-foot non-motorized pathway that connected to Howard Street that we constructed last year, and the existing non-motorized path of Howard Street to the south. So, yeah. Talk now about Kalamazoo Avenue specifically, which we have began the design process, went to commission in May. The limits of this project will go from Douglas Avenue, where it meets West Main, to Harrison Street. As part of this project, in addition to the road surface, we'll have ADA improvements, enhanced pedestrian crossings, additional crossings, street lighting, bus stop improvements, landscaping, and street furniture as budget allows. And again, as mentioned, it's important to note the amount of utility work that we'll be able to include as well, including hopefully burying overhead utilities, water main, storm, and sanitary. So, quick time frame. Here we are in summer 2022, beginning our outreach, or continuing our outreach, and beginning design work as well, out there taking real surveys, starting to form construction design plans. We'll continue and confirm our outreach in the fall, moving into winter, continuing design work, and do environmental assessments. It's our anticipation that we'll have preliminary design plans by spring of 2023, make final adjustments by summer of 2023, and have it out to bid in the fall.
So how are we going to get there with the community? We've been talking about this a lot. We talked about the 2019 project. We talked about all the other projects, Imagine Kalamazoo. What do we need to do? We need to reintroduce the project. COVID kind of put a bit of a damper on this specific streets project, not that work wasn't going on behind the scenes with engineers doing studies and us studying and tabulating the information from the 2019-2020 engagement process. So we need to reintroduce the project to the public, and we need to seek some input on some specific design elements along Kalamazoo Avenue. This includes things like crossings, where in the Stewart neighborhood and downtown, where do we need to make pedestrian improvements? Where do people want to cross? What makes the most sense? We also have some decisions, because we mentioned earlier, back in 2019 when we did the Design Your Own Street, the space is fixed, right? We have to make decisions within the space we have. Is it a bike lane? Is it on-street parking? Is it wider sidewalks? And we can't have all of them, so we need to make some decisions. And so we will be going back out to the community to talk about those things. Reintroduction, so information, and then seeking input, so collaboration. Quickly, public participation policy. You will be seeing an updated copy of the public participation policy at your August 1 meeting. Plan Commission is reviewing it this week. And it goes through to help one, create a public participation plan. It outlines a couple of things. I will not go through all of these right now. We have, however, gone through the document and done this exercise to make sure that we are being mindful and inclusive of who is at the table for this project. By defining the project, by defining who the stakeholders are, we then know how we need to engage, where we need to be, and what type of activities we need to have. So, there'll be a complete list up with dates by the end of this week on imaginekalamazoo.com/projects. Bit of a preview. We will be at Art Hop on August 5th. We're going to be at several lunchtime lives. We are going to do some evening walks, lunchtime walks, to catch people out on Kalamazoo Avenue to understand where they're going, where they're traveling, and why they made their choices. We will be having meetings in the North Side, East Side, and Stewart neighborhoods. And we'll be doing 2 meetings in downtown that have already been scheduled, one on August 19th at Arcadia Festival site, which will include some walks that our Complete Streets Advisory Committee will be running for us, as well as working with Southwest Michigan First to present this topic and have a dialogue with businesses at their August Business Town Hall. Everything we do will be mirrored online for those that prefer or is more convenient to do things virtually. And that is what we have. I'll make a plug again. CPED Book Club, Friday at noon, Street Fight, Janet City Khan. Even if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to come. There's a virtual opportunity to participate as well. If you're interested, please let me know. And we'll have cake in honor of Dennis's 51 years as a traffic engineer.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate the whole team being here. Are there questions specific to this presentation from the commission this evening? Seeing none, anything else? DCM Chamberlain.
No, I just want to thank the team. Again, this is just kind of how we take these really big concepts, turn them into really big projects, but yet work them through phases so that we're having constant community dialogue, engagement, but we're also going through a planning and design and then eventually a construction project. But we know this is an important project for not only the downtown, but all the surrounding neighborhoods around downtown and the neighborhoods that are touched by these streets. And so as the beginning of the presentation said, we want to make these for all. And so thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Very well done. Now is the opportunity for general public comments. So speakers will each have 3 minutes. You can come forward to the podium. You have an opportunity to sign in. And we will start with people in the chambers who'd like to make comments on any item this evening.
Good evening. It is wonderful to see all of you. I haven't been here in 2 or 3 years, as you know. I'm Dean Huck. My store is Michigan News Agency on the corner of Michigan and Church Street. I was in Seattle in 1965 when my pop called to tell me that we would not have to manage and repair and upgrade Michigan Avenue because Kalamazoo had given it to the state of Michigan. And I said, my God, what? That's our downtown street. That's the heart of Kalamazoo. What are you doing? And he said, no, it's fine, Dean. You go on to live your life. I'm going on to live mine. I immediately researched it and called him back to tell him that the language said it was to facilitate faster traffic flow through the Kalamazoo Central Business District. That's us. And they were going to roar by us, and that's what our bookkeeping showed. If you look at our books, immediately we saw half as many people. We put twice as many people on staff and got half as much money back each day. We actually bookkeep each day, as I'm sure you know, because we're a small business. Okay, in '88, he was running in the red and he wanted to give up, and he asked me if I would come back to Michigan News and run it. And my answer, of course, was yes. This is the community that I felt safe in after spending, 3 years and 2 months in San Tomas internment camp in the Philippine Islands during the Second World War. This was my home and my safe place. I came back in 1988. I turned the store around so that it is now making money, partly because of all of you. You are customers in My Michigan News. We are a bookstore now as well as a newsstand. Books give us 40%, newspapers 6%. Now you understand why newsstands are disappearing in the United States of America. But the really important thing is we have become a neighborhood bookstore. People walk down from the Stewart Avenue, from West Neach, from West Main, to be in the Michigan News because as they tell me, they want us to be here. We are essential to downtown Kalamazoo. And downtown Kalamazoo is essential to Kalamazoo County. Kalamazoo County is essential to Michigan, and Michigan is essential to the survival of the United States of America. And you know how much I believe in that. I lost my blood father in the Second World War to that.
Thank you very much. I just want to take a moment here just to remind people that after individuals in the chamber have had an opportunity to speak, there's an opportunity to call in. Andy Miller from our IT team here at the City of Kalamazoo will be managing that. But I want to give that number. If people do want to call in, now is the time to do it, and you'll have an opportunity to speak after those in the chambers have. That number is 888-382-9556. And you should probably call in now if you want to make sure you have an opportunity. Next, please.
Good evening. I'm John Cruiser. I live at 817 Boswell Lane. I'm also co-chair of Asylum Lake Preservation Association. I am here to request that parking at the Winchell Avenue entrance to Asylum Lake Preserve be reinstated. As is known, the removal of parking at this vital city and community green space was an unintended result of truly a very important city plan for creating safer streets and bike lanes. This has had a profound impact on our city's residents on accessing Asylum Lake Preserve, and your city traffic engineer and project manager for the Winchell Avenue bike lanes visited the site with Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Association and Asylum Lake Preservation Association. After this visit, the city traffic engineer drafted a proposal which would reinstate limited parking at the Winchell Avenue entrance. This area is only 0.026% of Winchell Avenue. Even with this consideration, it seems that the city has still refused to implement this plan. This is not a neighborhood park, nor is this just an issue between Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Association and the Asylum Lake Preserve Association. Asylum Lake Preserve is a city green space that is vital to our citizens and community. Asylum Lake Preserve is rich in diversity, provides an opportunity for wellness and connection for its citizens and the greater community, all of which are consistent goals of our city. It is incomprehensible that this commission would support the message this ban of parking screams. I am urging this commission to look at the big picture and ask yourself, what message are you sending to the citizens and community by not reinstating limited parking at the Winchell Avenue entrance? Why would this commission not support the reinstatement of limited parking at this historic and vital entrance to one of our city's great treasures? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
My name is Lori Holmes. I am a city resident of the Winchell area, right next to the Asylum Lake Preserve entrance in question. The phrase that I used to hear in Robert Rules of Order when we used to do meetings with Robert Rules of Order was point of personal privilege. And that phrase came into my mind today when I was getting ready to, again, talk to you about this. I am a privileged person. I live in a privileged place next to the preserve. And tonight, I feel that I'm speaking for people who are not so privileged. I want to think a little bit about what speaks for our values as a city. What really speaks for them? The values of justice, the importance of green space. What really tells our community what these values are and how tightly we hold them? Their actions. Their actions, like the way the Natural Features Protection Board works with developers. to make sure that new developments care for the natural features there. The persistence of renovating a motel for the unhoused in spite of all the obstacles the supply chain problems have presented, the way the police work with kids to lift them to hope through sport. These actions speak louder than even excellent words like the ones you endorsed at your last meeting. This little stretch of a dead-end road at the entrance to the largest and most beautiful green space in the city now speaks a message that's in contradiction to all these values. The reinstatement of parking there is not going to influence the traffic calming on the other 99% of Winchell Avenue. And who owns Winchell Avenue? Who pays for its maintenance? The Asylum Lake Preservation Association doesn't own it. The Winchell Neighborhood Association doesn't own it. Western Michigan University doesn't own it. It belongs to us, the city. As our city leaders, with a stroke of a pen, you can initiate the program that was suggested by Mr. Randolph. We're respectfully asking you, please, to do this and correct the message that's now going to our city residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Hello, City Commission. I'm Ryan Smith. I live off 912 Lay Boulevard in the Edison neighborhood, and I am co-chair of Southwest Michigan Democratic Socialists. We understand you have much important work to accomplish tonight, and is the reason we who support the Medicare for All resolution that we have but one speaker. We have provided the information for your review, and you have heard widespread support from our community. The positive effect of this legislation is undeniable. All the studies have proven this, including the economic impact report from the Congressional Budget Office of the federal government. All we need is political will. This is why I ask you to join us in building the social and racial justice movement. Medicare for All manifests the best values of our community and the actions you are taking to address our most pressing issues. We ask you to vote in favor of the Medicare for All resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shashante Collins. I'm a resident of the city of Kalamazoo and the co-chair of CCJT and also a proud member of Isaac. Let me start off by saying thank you to the City Commission Subcommittee for working on gun violence intervention and prevention and for bringing the recommendation forward to allocate $550,000 to United Way to grant out to collaborate with community partners who are already doing the work in the community. Some of our Isaac family members will be coming after me to read the resolution that stated that gun violence is a public health crisis in our city and our county, which was passed by the City Commission in September of 2021. The resolution was written by BIPOC women leaders, County Commissioner Tammy Ray, and the CEO and founder of Hope Through Navigation, Gwendolyn Hooker. Tonight, we want to lift the words of this resolution to help shape and guide our long-term strategy. With the money that has been allocated towards these efforts, many community collaborative partners are excited and determined to continue the work that has been taking place. With the remaining $450,000 out of the $1 million that was pledged by the county and the city, I, as a community member, would like to know the plans and timeline for the money and how it will positively impact those who are affected by gun violence here in the city that I live in. By declaring gun violence a public health crisis here in our city, you have started the process, and now the community is ready to collectively address gun violence as a public health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Dick Schultz, and I reside at 2949 Sunset Road in Oshtemo. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church in Bronson Park, Isaac's Leadership Board, and Isaac's Anti-Racist Task Force, all of which are heavily involved in doing the important work in the city of Kalamazoo that retiring DEI Director Dora Bonner so powerfully outlined to this body on April 4th in the completed DEI assessment. Because it is so difficult in a culture driven by the supremacy of whiteness to be, as City Manager Ritzema proclaimed in a statement read in January 2021 City Commission meeting, when he said the City Commission will be on a journey to become an anti-racist organization. I would like to add my 2 cents about one way that might best be accomplished. We all realize that throwing money at a problem does not guarantee that the problem will be solved. Nevertheless, providing available dollars to the organizations already in the field doing this work is essential. In my remaining time, I want to remind each commissioner of the language that you unanimously acknowledged not long ago in Resolution 21 through the various whereas statements. And the resolution was entitled "A Resolution Declaring Gun Violence a Public Health Crisis and allocating funding for ongoing community violence intervention." Whereas gun violence is a significant problem in the United States that affects people in all stages of life, from infants to the elderly, and is linked to many chronic diseases, obesity, substance abuse, and other physical, reproductive, and mental health consequences. And whereas gun violence is a leading cause of premature death in the United States, more than 38,000 people are killed and nearly 85,000 injured by guns each year. As a longtime advocate for violence prevention policies, the American Public Health Association recognizes a comprehensive public health approach to addressing this growing crisis is necessary. And whereas, as reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, nationwide more than 16,250 people were the victims of homicide and more than 38,000 took their own life in 1 year, according to the most recent data available. And whereas violence also affects youth in the United States, with homicide as one of the leading causes of death among persons 15 to 24 years old, according to the CDC. And whereas in addition, there are many victims of gun violence in this country, an average of 31,000 plus die per year from gun violence, and 71,000 survive gun.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yes, my name is Andrew Lehman. I've owned property in Kalamazoo for 38 years. I want to continue reading the resolution that was adopted back in September of last year. Whereas more than 1,200 people in Michigan died by gun violence in 2019, and an average of more than 3 people per day. Suicides were 61% of this gun deaths, and homicides were 38%. And whereas gun violence affects people of all ages and races in the United States, but has a disproportionate impact on black youth, young adults, and males, and whereas black Americans represent the majority of gun homicide victims, and black Americans 10 times more likely than white Americans to die by gun homicide, and whereas firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens, with more than 1,800 children and teens dying by gun violence every year. And whereas in Michigan, young black males aged 15 to 34 have a firearm homicide rate 42 times higher than white males of the same age group. And whereas Kalamazoo County has an average of 11 gun deaths each year, with a rate of 8.6 deaths per 100,000 people. And whereas with 21 deaths of gun violence in 2020, marked the highest number of homicides in Kalamazoo County this century, with more than 70 non-fatal shootings, with 18 deaths so far in 2021, including a 9-year-old boy, a 16-year-old girl, and a county deputy sheriff. And whereas the CDC has found that although there are significant numbers of violent deaths in this country each year, there are many more individuals who have survived violence and are left with permanent physical and emotional scars, and that this violence erodes communities by reducing productivity, decreasing property values, and disrupting social services. And whereas exposure to youth violence can lead to a wide array of negative health behaviors and outcomes, including alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and suicide. In addition, depression, anxiety, and other psychological problems can result from exposure to violence. And whereas the foregoing findings demonstrate the prevalence of violence and detrimental, effects that violence has on citizens of this nation, state, and county.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Cordelia Greer. I live at 508 Dinner here in Kalamazoo, and I'm here as part of Isaac's Leadership Board. Whereas it is the belief of the Kalamazoo City Commissioners that the issue of gun violence in Kalamazoo County is rooted in racial and health inequities and injustices experienced for generations of people of color. And whereas communities across the country require multidisciplinary solutions that address the root causes of violence. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities we serve is one of our highest responsibilities. And whereas the city recognizes the need to provide positive and safe environments for children through community programs as well as mental health services. And whereas the city is working with Kalamazoo County, other local municipalities, and community partners to expand out-of-school time programming for all youth. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after more than a year of increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in gun violence in Kalamazoo County. And whereas it is in the best interest of the residents of this city that we support the existing collaborations to establish an evidence-based public health response to address the underlying social, economic, and systemic factors that promote gun violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kalamazoo City Commission declares gun violence a public health crisis, and be it further resolved that the Kalamazoo City Commission and city administration will establish working relationships with other local municipalities, community partners, and community members to establish an evidence-based public health response to address the underlying social, economic, and systemic factors that promote gun violence. And be it further resolved that the Kalamazoo City Commission hereby allocates $1 million from the city's coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds for ongoing community violence intervention. And be it further resolved that the city administration is directed
Thank you, Cordelia. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Faison. I live in Township, but I work in the city. I work with Isaac as a housing task force intern, as well as GVP, GVI. First, I want to thank Commissioner Hoffman, Vice Mayor Cooney, Mayor Anderson, Commissioner Pradell, Commissioner Warris. Both of you were on the grill. I want to thank y'all for attending the Gun Violence Resource and Resilience Rally. Thank you again, Commissioner Warris, for partnering and planning with us to make this collaborative event on the north side, east side, and south side successful. We appreciate your boots on the ground working with us to make these events possible. I also would like to thank the other organizations that have been involved: JABS, CAP, GVI, Isaac, Urban Alliance, Blocks Club, Straight Motivation, Peace During War, GLOW, MK, NAACP, El Concilio, Bill Play, Healing of the Hood, Fatherhood Network, and 13½ Eastside Grocery for their collaboration. They helped make these events successful also. This was not just a gathering of food, but an intentional collaborative effort of many community organizations and strategies who are working together as a family to address the gun violence in our community. Gun violence, and together we as a family are addressing gun violence as a public health concern. We want to ensure that our community members impacted by gun violence have connection to gun locks, Black and brown therapists, mental health services, housing, resources for those facing obstacles, and more. That's the village approach. We continue to invite you all, and we encourage you all to continue to attend the events. I hope that you all have had a chance to look at the article written by Second Wave Media. A Peace Smoke in Edison brings a community to resources for healing for gun violence. If you haven't, it was issued on Wednesday, June 29th, but here are a couple passages I want to read. First one is, kids were having a blast in the Elmo Bounce House. The DJ was leading dancers in the cha-cha slide. One man in the grill was filling the air. I know it was with barbecue chicken. I'm trying to turn the page. With smoke about a ton of ribs, hamburgers, chicken, and more. The last passage I want to read really quick is from our own Commissioner Warris. He speaks with passion. We need to unite together to end gun violence. I believe it can stop. My faith tells me it can stop. But what needs to happen is we need to come together. If we don't stand together, we'll fall. I need you. Turn to your neighbors and say, I need you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, next, please.
Hello, my name is Paula Chomas, and I was moved to come up here and speak as a bicyclist. I live at 732 Howard Street, and I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, a former WAC, and I got PTSD, so I'm not having a seizure. I wanted to tell you that I am very happy that Stadium Drive is getting a sidewalk. It's not finished, but I've been riding up and down it around the construction workers. And I told one this morning, I thanked him for putting the streets in, the sidewalks in. And he said, well, then you're going to be really happy in the next couple of days. And also, I live at, in that senior, Crosstown Senior Community Building, whatever. And I live between Howard and Westnedge is hell. I have come up, they're talking about gun violence. I have come up the street and someone said there was cops everywhere swarming in the neighborhood. That happened twice. There was two shootings on different days that me and my bicycle had come across. And one of them, the second one, it was when that man was killed in the house. And I was riding right past it. And I don't always feel safe in my neighborhood where I was used to riding around and I look out for other bicyclists and I look out for children on bicycles, and if they don't have a helmet on, I will say something to their parents. And also I help keep track of what goes on in Axtell Creek, because people throw a lot of things in there that don't belong in there. And the children at the Montessori school, I don't know if you know this, they have their school's out, but before school is out, they're picking up all the trash. Excuse me. And that's a life lesson that we as adults still need to know, because nobody is exempt from helping keep our waterways and our earth clean. and I try to be a considerate bicyclist. I have a bell on my bike, and there are certain places I have to ride on the sidewalk where I don't want to because it's too dangerous. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening to our mayor, to our vice mayor, commissioners, and staff. My name is Charlay Davis, and I am the executive director of Isaac. I'm a proud member of GVI, brought to Kalamazoo by Isaac, a proud member of the Gun Violence Prevention Network, also the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, and then also a proud member of Blocks Club. A special thank you to Commissioner Hoffman and Vice Mayor Cooney and Commissioner Juarez for their recommendation tonight coming before the commission. Thank you so much for listening and lifting the voices of community members and those doing the work in public meetings, dialogues, individual meetings, and via email. To our mayor and commissioners tonight, we want to ask that you please vote your support for this recommendation. I wanted to lift the 50-plus emails that you should have received from community members, from those impacted, BIPOC community members, white ally community members, asking the commission to lean into the words that were passed in the resolution, and also to send the funding to the foundations, and to also center equity and anti-racism in this work, and also to do this work collaboratively with community. I did want to say that these are not form letters that you received. Each individual included their own personal information and their own experiences and personal narrative. So again, thank you for reading those. We are in support of the city and the county walking hand in hand with the resolution at the center and with community members doing something innovative and new to address the root causes of gun violence. I have to also say, as we start thinking about the work ahead, I need to lift collaborations. Isaac and GVI are partnerships, and something that we have discovered is that collaborations often don't happen because they're not always easy, and that's okay. I want to lift that when Dr. King talked about the beloved community, he said that it was not without conflict, but it was free of violence. Not without conflict, but free of violence. So we don't always have to agree, we won't always agree, but oh, when we can stay at the table, you all, and listen inclusively and center anti-racism and equity and the love for our community and the love for each other, that's when we see real change happen. And I look forward to seeing that unfold for us as a community. My final questions that I'm sure will be addressed tonight is, as we start thinking about this long-term strategy, what would it look like? Will GVPN continue, will they take the lead, as was stated during the Bleeding Out meetings? How will this long-term strategy as the short-term be tied back to public health resolution passed, again with equity, anti-racism, and inclusion? So in closing, may we remember the loved ones that we have lost and far too many community members across the country we are losing.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you. My name is Michael Doyle, and I live at 105 East Walnut Street. And as a stakeholder, I don't know who I'm supposed to address, whether it's the commission or the street planning committee that was here previously. However, I think you're both involved to some degree. Maybe one more than the other, but however, I'm a stakeholder, as I said, in crossing the streets. And one thing I find very challenging, I think I represent an aspect of the past slamming into the future in two ways. One is the streets and the crosswalks. One form of the past slamming into the future is somebody came up with an idea here in the city, and I don't know who it was, what their intent was, but an aspect that they've remained, and it's an obstacle as far as I'm concerned, with your crosswalks, and that is the bricks. I don't know, you know, as I said, this is where the past slams into the future. And I think the city was trying to grab an aspect of the past of brick roads and presented it into the future, and they dropped them on crosswalks in the city. And this is another aspect of the past slamming into the future. I'm up here, as you can see, I utilize a power chair, and all the crosswalks are my form of transportation and getting from one place to another. I have to commend whoever installed the curb cuts. That was that's a great advancement. However, when I come across a crosswalk and encounter a brick pavement in a smooth road, it don't make sense. I don't get it. I don't get it. So I guess what I'm here to say, in summary, is get rid of them. They serve no. I mean, I understand the past and the symbolization of brick roads overall. I think I want to commend the people that put them down back in the day, but today they have no value. It's almost like gas stations are going to become obsolete. You better put in electrical power stations. I ain't got to that one yet. But I'm just talking about the crosswalks and the bricks. I think crosswalks, they serve no purpose. I utilize these roads. I live downtown.
Thank you very much. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Good evening. Jeff Messer, city resident and volunteer for Rank My Vote, which is an all-volunteer, true citizen initiative to implement a ranked choice system in Kalamazoo, Royal Oak, Ann Arbor, and other cities as an educational effort in anticipation of a statewide ballot initiative for ranked choice voting in 2024. Our Kalamazoo petition drive now has approximately 1,400 verified signatures towards our goal of 3,000 by the end of this month. To get us to our goal, we're planning a super canvassing weekend in 11 days on Saturday and Sunday, July 16 and 17. We're inviting volunteers from Ann Arbor, Lansing, Grand Rapids, Andrew Yang's Forward Party, Libertarians, Democratic Socialists, Independent Conservatives, and anyone else who is willing and capable. We plan to door-to-door canvass that weekend in the Winchell and Westnedge Hill neighborhoods, hoping to get 1,000 signatures in a single weekend. If anyone in the audience would like to volunteer with us that weekend, please visit our website at rankmyvote.org and click the blue volunteer button on the homepage. You don't need to have prior campaign experience or be a city resident to help us. Again, that website, as you can see on my shirt, is rankmyvote.org, where my is MI, the postal abbreviation for Michigan. This past Saturday at the Bank Street Farmers Market, I exceeded my personal goal of 300 signatures total and now have 344. If any voters registered in the city of Kalamazoo would like to sign my petition, please meet me at the Bank Street Farmers Market every Saturday morning this month between 8:30 a.m. and noon. I stand on the Bank Street sidewalk at Collins Street near Judy Sarkozy's stall. For those of you watching this meeting live, I will shortly go outside to the front steps of City Hall and be available to collect your signature until about 9:30 p.m.
Now, please welcome to the lectern retired City and County Commissioner Jack Urban. He will share why he supports ranked choice voting, and you should too. Thank you, and I'll give Clerk Borling a copy of my remarks for the minutes.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Jack Urban. I live on Portage Street in Kalamazoo. I'm going to address you on why I support ranked choice voting to be on the ballot as an option to consider this November. I want to find a middle way, some way to reduce the polarization in this country. I want voters to consider an alternative means of measuring preferences for candidates that is more nuanced than victory or banishment. The method of voting we have now does not allow voters to rank their preferences and have that ranking be influential in determining the outcome of the election. If the ballot doesn't allow you to express your preference for all of the candidates, the outcome will be determined without that information from you or from any other voter. But with ranked choice voting, you rank your preferences for the candidates on a single ballot, as many candidates as you want considered. Now, those of you who've been in the city for a long while have heard the advice, vote for only 3. Remember that? Vote for only 3. But what if one of those people you choose of the 3 doesn't make the cut? Information on who you would prefer instead is never even asked for. With ranked choice voting, the election system will know who your 4th choice is and will apply it in determining who does make the cut for that 3rd commission seat. Think about it. If you'd like to see the option of moving to ranked choice voting in city elections be put on the ballot in November, sign the petition that Jeff Messer is circulating and others so that voters can consider it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the chambers this evening that would like to make a comment during public comment period? See no one? Andy Miller, do we have anybody who has called in with prepared for a comment?
Let's find out. Go ahead, caller, with your comments. Caller, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tina McClinton. I live on Lake Street. I'm calling with the same question I call every time about, would you please fix the sewers and sanitary sewers, the storm drains, and the sewer drains. For when we flood, they back up. They need to be cleaned. The storm drains have never been cleaned. People throw junk in it. We clean our own on the top of it, but it's so filled with gunk. Some of them even have 5-gallon buckets in them. All I ask is, would you please fix the problem in Southtown neighborhood? And would you please accept our neighborhood as a neighborhood? We are Southtown neighborhood. We're a small, little, diverse neighborhood. We all get along with each other. We all try to help each other out. We do what a neighborhood should do. But you won't let us be our own neighborhood. I don't know why you won't accept Southtown neighborhood as a neighborhood. I know we're a small neighborhood, but we do exist. And another thing I need to bring up is you're talking about gun violence and you're talking about children. I see children in an apartment complex, and it's nothing to hear. Oh, there were shots the other day, or someone shot such and such. There's little children out there where I feed. I see kids off of Alamo in an apartment complex. I don't know if I'm supposed to say the name, so I'm not going to. Their playground has 2 slides, has 3 little things for them to walk on, and a little balance beam. That's it. Last time they were fixing up the apartment complex, they were doing the playground. One little boy sat there and said to me, "Boy, I wish we had some swings out here. They don't have basketball hoops. They don't have swings. These children have nothing to do but get in trouble. They are sweet children. I feed them every day. I've been feeding that same apartment complex every summer through the pandemic for 8 years now. And this is a place that really needs help. The children need help to get out of this cycle. Thank you. Bye.
Caller, go ahead with your comments.
Good evening. My name is Mag Adams, and I reside in the city of Kalamazoo, and I'm a member of Isaac's anti-racism team. I'm speaking today on item 2 under the consent agenda. It states, approval of the final design for a statue in Bronson Park honoring Abraham Lincoln's visit in 1856 to Kalamazoo by the Kalamazoo Abraham Lincoln Institute. And I believe this city commission approved this in 2013. On the website, it says the purpose is to create a sustained value from Kalamazoo's unique Abraham Lincoln legacy with educational programs including leadership development, training for youth, art, essay contests, and an instructive commemorative statue of Abraham Lincoln in Bronson Park. Sounds wonderful, right? But who was Abraham Lincoln? They state that Lincoln's life story provides a tangible model for teaching social emotional competencies in a classroom instruction. They also say they embrace his vision of a more just America. And a speech given here in 1856 that gave voice to the moral issue of his day, slavery. I've read the speech, and he does make some valid points, but I'm not really here to debate the speech. I'm asking each of you to pause and ask yourself, is a speech unique to Kalamazoo alone enough to erect a statue? And exactly what part of his legacy are we commemorating him on? So I go back to, who is Abraham Lincoln? Was he racist? Anti-racist? I think his place in history is complex and should always be questioned. It's been stated that he used the N-word, told racist jokes, said that black people were inferior to white people, and that slavery could be ended by shipping willing black people back to Africa. Even in a debate with Stephen Douglas 2 years after being here in Kalamazoo, he said, and I quote, "There's a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social equality." Now, some will say over time that he evolved because of his morality. And yeah, we can see some of that evidence in his speeches, his political action, and even his social behavior. We could debate back and forth Lincoln's history as a white supremacist or an opponent of slavery, which leads me to what would this institute's educational program portray of Lincoln? It says it aligns with Michigan's core curriculum. And as a former educator for 37 years, this in itself is problematic. Think back to your days in history class. What did you learn about Abraham Lincoln or slavery? So in conclusion, I ask each of you to pause and reflect. Do we want a statue of a man in Bronson Park that has a contested history, not only with black people, but with indigenous folks as well, in a park that has an indigenous ceremonial mound? Does this man's questionable moral evolvement depict the social emotional competency we want to see in our classroom instructions? And I don't even know what to say about Lincoln as a model for youth leadership. But I thank you for pausing, for listening, and hopefully let's look at all of Lincoln's legacy, and is this a statue that we really want at Bronson Park? Thank you.
Caller, go ahead with your comments.
Hello?
Yes, caller, go ahead with your comments.
Hello? Hello?
Caller, please go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, hi. I'm calling the city. I'm a resident, and I would like some enforcement with it seems appears that drug deals are going on. People are littering the street. And the street I'm speaking of is Bessie Street near Church Street. Now it's all littered up. People dumping out stuff out their cars, condiments, bottles, just trash, and seems like it's meet on Bessie Street to buy drugs. It's horrible. I implore the city to get some law enforcement, some monitoring patrol or something, because this is terrible over here. And I'm tired of seeing all this trash and litter up and down the street. People coming from all over buying drugs, selling drugs, it looks like. I really would like to have this area cleaned up. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Give it a second. Looks to be all our public comments at this time.
Thank you very much for your help with that. Andy Miller, appreciate it. Next is the consent agenda. DCM Chamberlain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the consent agenda is approval of the purchase of play equipment from Game Time Sinclair Recreation through Omnia Cooperative Purchasing Program in the amount of $215,000. Item number 2 is approval of the final design for a statue in Bronson Park honoring Abraham Lincoln's 1856 visit to Kalamazoo as proposed by the Kalamazoo Abraham Lincoln Institute. Number 3 is approval of a contract with Santiago Services LLC to perform nuisance trash and debris removal services in the amount of $453,000 and approval of a budget amendment to the Solid Waste Special Revenue Fund for the same amount to cover the cost of this service. Number 4, approval of a 1-year contract extension for the purchase of 75% phosphoric acid from Caras LLC in the amount of $472,500 and approval of a wastewater budget amendment in the amount of $253,897 to cover the increased costs. Number 5 is approval of a contract supplemental and wastewater budget amendment in the amount of $499,700.40 for the purchase of 260FL polymer for the primary and secondary solids dewatering process from Solenis LLC. Number 6 is approval and acceptance of an easement with Midwest Energy and Communications for electric service to the 6th Street South Water Tower. And 7, approval of the sale of 3408 Hoover Street to Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services for the price of $500. That is all.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 7 on the consent agenda and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Juarez.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Hess. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes, I'm going to abstain on item G2 as I've been a board member and secretary of the Kalamazoo Abraham Lincoln Institute, better part of 8 years.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Now we are down to our regular agenda. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain.
Yes, the first item is a first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 22 of the Kalamazoo City Code, General Crimes and Offenses.
Is there a staff report on this item?
We do not, but this was an item that's been worked on by the City Attorney's Office, and so I'll turn it over to City Attorney Clyde Robinson.
Attorney Robinson.
No, there's no staff, well, there's no presentation other than what was contained in the agenda packet, but I'm here to answer any questions.
If you would be so kind, since this has been a long, multi-year process, just a very quick thumbnail sketch of why we have this and what you've been doing.
What we have been doing, and this probably started, I want to say in 2014, maybe 2013, was to go through the city code, look for primarily what could we decriminalize, what were misdemeanors that could be made civil infractions, and that was my staff and I were going through that. We divided it up and we've been going through somewhat chapter by chapter. Some chapters have already come before the commission for decriminalization. Some have been outright repealed because part of that, the other part of the search was looking for those ordinance provisions that no longer appeared to be relevant, either because state law changed, because we're not enforcing those violations any longer, or just because of the nature of the 21st century, some of those things harken back to a much different time. So we no longer needed those ordinances. Probably the key ordinance was this one, Chapter 22. This is our General Offenses Code. This took a lot of work, a lot of going through, but I think we're at and some of that was delayed by the COVID pandemic and not being able to meet as an office and engage in discussions amongst my staff, as well as others who had input into the process. But we've got to this point tonight to present to the commission that does many things as indicated by the agenda report, gets rid of some offenses that no longer are relevant or very rarely enforced, and decriminalizes those things that we could. The ones that remain criminal offenses are criminal offenses also in state statute. I won't go the litany, but like retail fraud. You know, if you steal, you're probably that's a crime. It's going to remain a crime. If you maliciously destroy somebody else's property or deface it, that's going to remain a misdemeanor. On the other hand, we've made a civil infraction of some of the other types of offenses that our public safety officers regularly run across. It's kind of crude, but and we are a college town, and there's a lot of sometimes drinking that people can't seem to find a restroom. So urination in public, no longer a misdemeanor, a civil infraction, that type of offense. Littering becomes a civil infraction. However, if you just throw a gum wrapper out of the car window, that's going to be a small fine. But if you're depositing some of the complaints that we heard during public comment, huge bags of trash on the side of the road, that's going to be a much more substantial fine based on the quantity of the litter that has been deposited, but it's still a civil infraction. So those are some of the things that I would like to highlight in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. I appreciate your years of work on this. Just to remind everybody that this is a motion to offer for first reading. As with every ordinance, it comes to this body twice, so we will be acting on it to our next meeting. Any other questions for Attorney Robinson or staff? Commissioner Pradel.
Just had a couple questions for you, City Attorney Robinson. Throughout the document, I noticed in a number of places it changes the terminology from guilty or convicted to responsible, and I'm assuming that's because it's going from becoming a misdemeanor to the civil infraction. Is that where that language?
That's correct.
The other thing as well on 2218, the begging, panhandling, and soliciting that's on page 49 of our packet, on B, it strikes, end quotes, intentionally blocking or interfering with the safe or free passage of a pedestrian or vehicle by any means. Can you explain a little bit about why that was, why you removed that portion?
That's covered by state law in regard to getting into a street and blocking traffic. That's covered by state law, and there's been some case law interpreting that.
And I saw in 2219 it also includes a little bit about that as well. The other thing I was going to ask you as well, there was in 22-28, there's another area that's is removed that says it's been removed to Chapter 21, and it's about dust emissions from commercial establishments. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Again, more of a nuisance type of thing, and that got removed to the nuisance chapter, and probably was done before we amended this chapter.
Cool. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Other questions for Attorney Robinson? Seeing none, this is the opportunity for anyone in the audience like to comment on this item. This item H1, please come to the podium, give us your name and whether you live in the city. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for their comments. Seeing none, the recommended action is a motion to offer the ordinance for first reading. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Pradel,
Second.
supported by Commissioner Decker. Any discussion, commissioners? Commissioner Hess.
No discussion, but I want to thank Attorney Robinson and his staff for the hours and hours of time that you've spent doing this. It was a necessary step, and hopefully the city benefits from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may, thank you, Commissioner Hess, for your comments. I want to give credit where credit is due. A lot of this work was done by former Deputy City Attorney Richard Cherry and Assistant City Attorney Sarah Wenslick. They really did the heavy lifting on particularly on this chapter.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. You got through the whole roll call, right, Clerk Burling? Yes, okay.
Yes.
So thank you, Commissioners. The motion to offer this ordinance change for first reading has passed. Next is item H2 on the regular agenda, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain.
Second item is approve the allocation of $550,000 of the $1 million Community Violence Prevention, ARPA, state and local fiscal relief funds to the United Way of South Central Michigan for grants to nonprofit organizations for eligible activities in direct response to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Is there a staff report on this item?
We do not have a staff report, but there was a lot of work that went into this item tonight that was led up by a subcommittee of the City Commission, including Vice Mayor Cooney, Commissioner Hoffman, and Commissioner Juarez. So if they have any comments on this item, I'd like to turn the floor over to them.
Rock, paper, scissors? Okay. Just a couple comments. I think this just very good to see this on the agenda and us talking about this and finally getting some traction behind what we've been talking about for a while now when it comes to gun violence and the resolution being passed last September. And if we think about the timeline of this, it's pretty significant and not so drawn out. It felt like the urgency that we had to get this done was so in front of us that it wasn't really that much time that we took to make this happen. And so I feel like just with all the support they got behind it, all the people who are on the front lines doing the work when it comes to gun violence and prevention and intervention, the support from this dais and the mayor, and just to see the staff be able to work on the turnaround time on this, even from our last city commission meeting, is amazing. It's very, very important to look at what can be accomplished in a way when we look at things from a diverse equity and inclusion lens, right? When we look at these situations that are plaguing our city from that lens, and then we decide to take the time and say, let's figure this out so that we get it correct, right? So we get it right. And there's always the bumps and bruises, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and, we don't always agree on everything, and that's okay because, if we did, then that wouldn't make sense, right? And so I just appreciate my colleagues and the dialogue that we had with the city and the county and us staying the course to make sure what we're doing with this allocation of money lines up with a resolution. And I think and I hope that we will continue to see that happen with as we allocate more money towards these kind of things, right? And so I'm just real grateful to be part of the subcommittee with Vice Mayor Don and Stephanie and some of the county commissioners and having these conversations. And I think we're at a point where we can say we have a plan, right? We have a direction. We have a target that we're aiming at. And now it's up to us to approve this, to see this happen. And I want to just give thanks to the group of people who've been working on gun violence for a while, for years now. For those individuals who've been sacrificing day in and day out, having conversations with families who lost loved ones to gun violence, supporting them in burial and funeral costs and all these other things. And so I just my heart goes out to those who lost loved ones to gun violence. And I know as a city we can do better. And that's what we're shooting towards, and that's what we're trying to obtain, is how to be a city that does better. When I hear about all these things that Kalamazoo is doing and that other people notice, other cities are taking notice, like Attorney Roberts said earlier with our ordinance, like that stuff excites me. Don always says this, Vice Mayor Don, he says, we can be a model for the nation. And so I'm just super, super excited to see this happen tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Juarez. Any other comments from members of the subcommittee? Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to honor all of the people that have been doing the work. And I know this word urgency, urgent, has been hitting us over the head for almost 3 years now. We don't want to make mistakes by just doing something really quick without being intentional. And this gave us the opportunity to step back. Even though there were tense times and there were disagreements, Dr. Charlay always say this, just come back to the table. And we were able to do that. And lives are going to change with this. And this is just, you know, $1 million sound like a lot of money, but when you think at the severity and the deepness of this issue of gun violence, it's really a drop in the bucket. And so this is going to give us an opportunity to see what we can do, and then how can we be bolder, how can we be more creative, and how we can include even more people, because there's enough for everyone. And this situation, this issue, this crisis is not going to go away overnight. So I just appreciate the patience that the commission had with us and for staff. And I just got to give a shout out to Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb. She always inspires, and we get our Get 'em Girl songs going, and we get ready to do this hard work. So I just appreciate her staff and what she's done and what she's continuing to do with the county. So appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hoffman. Vice Mayor Cooney.
My colleagues have done a great job laying out how important this is. And I think all the people that came to the microphone tonight looked at how important this issue is for our community. The one thing, the most fundamental thing we can do for people is keep them safe. That's an issue of justice. And we know that gun violence is not only the leading cause of death among young black males, but it causes more death than the next 9 causes combined. So this is an issue of justice, and we're taking an important first step tonight, a first step. We have to move forward with a comprehensive plan that is community-driven and evidence-based so that we can establish a center for the prevention of violence in the city to really move us forward on this. You know, I think that too often when we look at stopping violence in the city, we look at public safety and we think it's their job. It's not just public safety's job. It's all of our job. I want to commend Chief Coakley for all the innovations that he has put up with the Police Athletic League and so many other things. He's done a wonderful job for our city. And we have to step up now. And tonight, we're looking at organizations that have been on the street really making a difference in people's lives. And we want to support them in the great work that they're doing. So I look tonight as a very important first step. We got a long way to go, but we're on the road, and we know that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any questions for our subcommittee members here? Commissioner Hess.
I want to thank you all for your intentional work on this, and DCM Lamb, thank you so much for participating in that as well. Vice Mayor Cooney, we also collaborated and did the proclamation with the county. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your talks with the county and where those went, and what we can expect in our collaborations with them.
Sure, my other colleagues will jump in on this, but we've been meeting with County Commissioner Tammy Ray and other county commissioners and been talking with this, and I know that Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb has had conversations with the administrator from the county, and we are anticipating closer relationships, and we're hoping that they're going to join us in putting money on the table with the United Way to further this step. That's our anticipation. That's what we hope for. We think we're moving in that direction.
I would also like to just add that, it is very important for our entire community to know that gun violence is not a city of Kalamazoo issue. It is a county-wide issue. And with the county and the city coming together to adopt this resolution, we have an opportunity to do something that's never been done before as it pertains to gun violence and building that deep relationship with the city and the county partnership. So I thank Commissioner Ray and Commissioner Hepler for attending some of those meetings with us. And I'm positive that we can join forces to really make a dent as a county and an entire community.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Any other questions for our subcommittee? One of the entities that is identified in this allocation decision is United Way. I wonder, there's a representative here with us. Would you be willing to come forward and just introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about how United Way is involved in this kind of activity?
My name's Alyssa Stewart. I am Chief Impact Officer for the United Way of South Central Michigan. Happy to be here with you all tonight and to talk about this partnership. To be honest, I'm always humbled when I come into this space, and I'm humbled in our partnership with the city. This is now, or would be, the second time we have partnered to distribute ARPA funds. We are honored and humbled. We really, especially in this instance related to gun violence, see ourselves as an instrument. And we're honored that the city and county see us as suitable instruments, really to make your will done in the community and to meet the needs of our community. I think that's important to say because we are a funder in the community, but in this instance, we are not acting as United Way. We are acting as instruments of the city and county in this issue of gun violence. And our goal in this process would be really what's been said eloquently by so many others tonight, which is our goal with this process would be to center and adequately resource the organizations and leaders who have been doing this work. And I just want to name, they've been doing this work because in many cases, organizations, other institutions and organizations have not, right? They've been filling the cracks and gaps in our community. And so we really feel it's important that this process, again, create those adequate resources that can allow them to do the work that they've been doing on a shoestring or with no string, with no budget, just out of heart and passion and grit and determination for their own neighborhoods and their own neighbors. And so, yeah, we would use a similar process to what we used previously. We would use community consultants to ensure that there's community and voice in the process. But we would really try to make a very streamlined and efficient process. One critical piece of our process previously and this process would be walking alongside the grantees. We know many of these organizations may have never received federal funds previously, so we would really be working hand in hand. We have a dedicated staff person on our team who's becoming an ARPA expert, who would walk alongside them and make sure that they're staying in compliance, that they're keeping all the paperwork and all the documents that are critical because this is federal funding. And so that's a critical piece of our approach as well, as making sure we're a supportive partner every step of the way with these grantees. So that's what I'd share at this time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. Please.
Commissioner Hess?
Alyssa, thank you for being here. Absolutely. I wonder if you could give us a kind of a timeline. I know it's in the packet, but for the audience, could you give us a timeline as to what we're looking for and when this work can be expected to begin?
Absolutely. So what has been discussed so far with city staff, based on the subcommittee's desires and wishes, is this first phase being what we as grantors would call a closed process. And that would mean that using criteria determined by the subcommittee, that a group of potential grantees would be invited to apply. That allows us to have a bit of a shorter time frame than we traditionally would have if we did a full open process where we disseminated information widely and opened the floodgates, if you will. And so we believe that we could basically do this process, comprehensive process with all the due diligence required of a federal process within 10 weeks. So once agreement from the city and also hopefully the county, because it would be our goal, of course, too, to have a shared process that would be much more streamlined and seamless for the grantees. So I know county and all parties are working as quickly as possible to come to agreement on that. We would then be able to get guidance from you all on the priorities, any criteria or things that you'd want us to be considering as we launch the process. And then from there, we would go and commence on a 10-week process. The end of that process, we would have dollars out the door in the hands of those grantees. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Commissioner Pradle.
Hey, Alyssa, thanks for being here. Question for you. It mentions in the packet about it being a 2-year grant term. And so, assuming that the 5 entities that are in the closed pool of people who can apply for these funds, assuming they can expend them throughout the whole rest of the summer and fall, would there be opportunities for us to allocate additional funds to, go on beyond another 2 years if we needed to? And the second question I was going to ask you as well is, how seamless do you see it combining both the city and the county ARPA dollars? And even though those are both uniquely separate, creating that one pool and using it and staying in compliance with the federal guidelines and those sort of things.
Yeah,
so, 2
great
questions.
Yeah, so great question. I actually might start with the latter one first, if that's okay. So that's a great question. And to be fair, we have not done that previously. We're honestly very, again, honored and humbled to be part of a shared process. That's really exciting to work with 2 entities at once. So there would definitely need to be some negotiation, for lack of a better word, on the back end with all of the legal minds at both parties to make sure we're utilizing the funds in the way that aligns with both of their interests. But I'm excited to say the feedback we've gotten so far from the city has been very open. There's been a very large list of eligible activities and a very open sort of approach as to what work they would want these dollars to enable. So I'm optimistic that the county, that their interest will fall very much in line. So I think there will be strong alignment there. And then on the back end, it will just be some fun logistics of whose money goes where and making sure that we're being very thoughtful. Our goal would be to have the money, if possible, each grant be fully funded by one of the 2 entities so that there's not a risk of commingling funds or just any confusion in that sense. So to have each grant funded by one entity. So if that's possible, that's what we would work towards. But again, that would be based on further negotiation and the desires of city and county. And then your first question, now of course I've forgotten it. Can you?
So it was just about, if one of the entities were to use all the funds by the end of fall, but it's a 2-year
Just a bit of
grant.
context, great question. We did decide on a 2-year term, largely because of what we learned from the first ARPA process we did in partnership with you all. We did a 1-year fund in that case, and we just found that a lot of organizations had to ramp up very quickly and then are struggling to spend the money. They had to bring on staff or do other things that just took some time. And so it really was pretty rushed in a 1-year time period. So we want to give folks time. They could request up to 2 years. So not all will necessarily, but they could. And then, yeah, that would really be based upon your guidance. If future funds, our goal would be to grant as much of the money granted in an initial round as possible. We know the need is there. We know they've been doing the work in an underfunded manner. And so, but yeah, if you all were open to it and if further waves of funds came or other things, we would be happy to follow any guidance from you all and let the funds flow as freely as they possibly could.
Another question for you as well, as I know it was a concern during the KidNet process with that funding about, say if there's an entity in our community that's doing amazing work on the ground and it's research-based and it's been incredibly effective, but they might not be a 501c that conducts an annual audit with CBRTANs and all those kind of things. How do you foresee there being opportunities for other entities to plug into these 5, or down the road potentially if there's other more broader funding that's
Absolutely, that is always a question. Many of our activists in this space are newer 501c3s or do not yet have status, maybe have been working as a program of another entity or just as organizers and activists, which is amazing. So there would always be the option to have a fiscal sponsorship situation, where they could be linked with another 501c3. And so, I think that would be a great outcome if we could start to cluster the work in a way that meets the needs of all parties so that these funds can be accessed. And yeah, I mean, I know that the organizations have been identified for this first wave, but absolutely in future rounds, I think there could be great collaboration. These first organizations, if funded in this first phase, would have now experience administering these funds, so they would be in a great position to bring others under their umbrella and do the same.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I know that's something we've been curious about. And then I know that you all have been pretty darn busy at United Way with the major merger, and congratulations to you as well with your recent promotion.
Thank you.
Very well deserved. But I wanted to ask as well, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, so if you don't feel comfortable but do you foresee opportunities to potentially plug in the other portions of the philanthropic community or other funders and donors into this work so that we can, I guess, kind of leverage these dollars that we're investing to create a greater impact?
That is a great question. We are excited, and United Way is part of a group of Kalamazoo funders. We're excited to talk about this issue in future conversations and make sure that the philanthropic community is in the loop and understands the dynamics of this work. So that will be an agenda item in an upcoming Kalamazoo funders meeting. I'd also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are other funders who have been working in this space. So the Kalamazoo Community Foundation is one I would name. They have been convening some groups and doing some work as part of a network of community foundations. And so it would be our goal to collaborate with them in an effort to not be duplicative or to undo any of the efforts that they've made. They have also funded gun violence work through their Community Urgent Relief Fund in the past, which our Disaster Relief Fund collaborates with. So I think there's readiness and willingness amongst our funder community to tackle this issue.
Thank you. Any other questions from Commission? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Thank you for spending the evening with us here. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? It's item H2. If so, please come to the podium, give us your name, whether you live in the city, and you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing no one, the recommended action is a motion to approve the allocation of funds. Is there a motion?
So move.
Made by Commissioner Juarez,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I hope that we're also looking at ways to make what we're doing here sustainable as we go forward. Putting dollars into the community for what is well needed, but when you start this program off, if it's only going for a few years, we want to make sure that if we're going to put something in place that we are able to sustain it going forward and just not for the term of what we have the ARPA dollars for. I see there's going to be great work here. There's already been great work done. I just want to make sure that this is something that we are all going to be able to sustain in the future because our city needs it and our community needs it and our youth needs it.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Pradel.
Commissioner Decker, you just made me think of something. I think, one of the challenges you hear a lot of people talk about wanting to do something about gun violence, and here's an opportunity if you're listening to this or out in the community where you have an opportunity to support one of these organizations that are doing the work on the ground or support United Way to do this work, because it really is going to take a village. It's going to take more than just the city funding this, and to be sustainable, it's going to require a huge coalition of people who are supporting and passionate about supporting this work in our community for years to come. So I was just going to add that note.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Any other discussion? One thing I wanted to mention, which is just something I find something I find, a positive about this whole action is that the 3 subcommittee members, none of them were on the commission when this public health crisis was passed as a motion, and 2 of the members who were on the commission at that time, and part of that, Vice Mayor Griffin and Commissioner Cunningham and I, had the opportunity to be the beginning small group on this. And when we were discussing early on in these new terms what kinds of extracurricular activities that commission members are all need to be part of, these 3 individuals stepped forth with a great deal of energy and wanted to be part of this work. And this reminds me of how the work passes from person to person, and the values carry on, even though the names may change. And I think that's important to remember, that this work is infused in the community and an important part of all our commitment to this town that we live in. So thank you once again for this, for keeping this going. And I know this is, as you said, Vice Mayor Cooney, really a beginning, and we'll see more coming our way. So thanks again. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
That should have been Vice Mayor Cooney. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item H2 is approved. Next. Reports and legislation. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do you have a report?
No official report tonight, sir, but I just want to just piggyback on the motion that you just took here tonight. There's a lot of moving pieces, and it's moving quickly now, and we thank you all very much for that. And so we will commit to giving the commission regular updates. I think it was mentioned tonight, even with the different events that are going on with public safety and other departments and other organizations. So look for future updates from city staff to just keep everybody in the loop as to what is happening and how these different pieces can fit together. That is all.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Next on our agenda is policy items, and this is item K1 on the policy item agenda. I guess I will start with you, Vice Mayor Cooney.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the Democratic Socialists of America for bringing for us this proposal to advocate for the passage of H.R. 1976, which is a bill that would establish Medicare for all, single-payer health care in the country. One of the biggest things that we can do as elected officials is advocate for our community. And one of the things that we need to advocate for is that everybody has access to the health care that they need. And the healthcare system that we have in place right now is the most expensive healthcare system in the world by far, and there are so many other countries that provide better healthcare for their people. We have the best healthcare in the world if you can pay for it. But if you can't pay for it, then you don't have very good healthcare at all. So this resolution that we're asked to endorse tonight would add our voices to the voices of the county commission and many other commissions around the world, over 100 in the country, who have endorsed single-payer health care. I would hope that we would be able to pass this resolution tonight. So I put it on the agenda that we endorse the resolution supporting H.R. 1976, the Federal Medicare for All Act of 2021.
So really, there's no, thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney, there's no staff report on this or questions on it. So maybe at this point, I will just look for a motion, and then we can move to discussion after that. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess before that, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this item?
Hi, guys. I don't really have anything prepared, but I'd just like to say that, watching this meeting, you can kind of realize that Medicare for All touches upon a lot of the issues you were talking today. One of the ones being about making the city an anti-racist kind of city, a place to live in. Medicare for All would go a long way making that happen. Another kind of grim thing that we're talking about a lot is gun violence. If you survive gun violence, you walk away with a hefty amount of debt, with the amount of hospital bills and recuperation you have to do. And Medicare for All would make sure that those gun violence victims would only have to focus on their well-being and getting better and getting back into the community, rather than being not only shot and being, you know, the subjects of immense violence, but also be subject of immense poverty at the end of it as well. So I feel like a lot of these issues are linked together. What we're asking is purely symbolic, but it's really powerful. You know, you guys are elected officials. We've been out in the community for years now talking to people, and this is a really important issue. You know, we've been talking to people with terrible circumstances regarding their health, being able not to afford medication, being able to afford medication, but having to weigh up the balances between if they're going to heat their house or feed their children. And this is something that should not happen in a first world country. Where I'm from, the beautiful United Kingdom, you know, we have the NHS as one of our proudest institutions, and that's something that I would think that America would love to have across here. And given, you know, what we've heard from our community, in all the neighbourhoods, from a variety of incomes, variety of skin colours, variety of backgrounds, everybody believes that healthcare is a human right, and I think our community has shown it's a human right, and I think we really need to fight for these rights, especially given the last couple of weeks. We've seen what happens if we don't stand up and we do fight and be proactive about fighting for our rights. We can see them just easily stripped away. So I hope today that you know, spend some time and you pass this resolution in support of Medicare for All, because it's really important. And while you might think the impact isn't massive on our local community here, it really is, and it's going to be huge on the national scale as well. So I really thank you for taking the time to read over the resolution. I'm looking forward to your votes in support of it in just a moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? See no more comments. The action would be a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess, is that right? And support Commissioner Decker. Discussion. Commissioner Prado?
Yeah, I think you heard this out there, but the U.S. ranks 35th in the world with health outcomes, and even worse for infant mortality and life expectancy, yet we spend the most on healthcare costs in the country, in the world, I'm sorry. And you definitely see that there's something wrong with that. You look at, you know, there's not a single party persuasion or political persuasion that isn't adversely impacted by this. And, you know, even though you see it's the Democratic Socialists of America bringing this forward, this is something that, you know, truly would benefit every living American. The other thing that I'm always dumbfounded by is, like, in terms of public employers and private businesses, I mean, why that community doesn't get on board with this blows my mind. We have 660 some employees with the city of Kalamazoo, and how hard it is to figure out how to keep up with those escalating, you know, costs of healthcare coverage. Same with businesses. It's just mind-boggling why this is such a difficult conversation to have as a country. And as somebody that had a grandfather, at his death, he had less than $10,000 to his name. When I saw the just disgusting care that he received, because he worked his entire life and still had less than $10,000 to his name when he died, it haunts me to this day. And I can't think of a better reason than just my grandfather alone, and every other grandfather and grandmother in the world that deserves this human right to health care. So I plan to support.
Thank you, Commissioner Prado. Other discussion? Commissioner Hess.
Well, it wouldn't be my grandparents, but it would be my grandkids. You know, I've heard you talk, Commissioner Pradel, about voting for your kids. I'm now voting on behalf of my grandkids. I want them to live in a just, equitable world where health care for all is an expectation and not something we have to fight for on a regular basis.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did some research on this that was in our packet today, and also from conversation with people that have been at city commission meetings. And I also think about what it cost my family for the health care through a union job that my husband has, what it would be if we were paying all of that. And I think about some of my family members that are just going to work and sometimes just to pay insurance that they're only going to use ever so often. So I think that having something like this for all is really going to benefit low to moderate income communities. It's going to benefit single mothers, single fathers. It's going to benefit families, just everyone within the city of Kalamazoo and within the world. And I think that also, you know, on the good note, there's also some things where you have to think of, you know, when the government is paying for something, you know, taxes or something's going to increase. You can't get everything for free. So I do think that that's something that, you know, I don't see too much talked about how taxes may go up just a little bit because of that. But overall, I think it's a great program. I know that once it is instituted, it takes about 2 years for everyone to be fully covered. But again, that's really going to start putting some of these doctors and hospitals, you know, kind of on notice that, you know, hey, you've got to treat people fairly when it comes to, especially pharmaceuticals, pricing out medicine, pricing out care, people being able to have the surgeries that they need to have versus holding off of them for 5 and 10 years down the road until they can actually get on the Medicare that's going to help them out. So I will definitely support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Other discussion? Commissioner Juarez.
Yeah, really in support of this. You know, being a diabetic, test strips are very expensive, right? And prescriptions are very expensive, and so that is a huge thing. It's a huge thing, and I can just only imagine those who are kind of like me, who are like Alice families, who are working, trying to make ends meet, but have to make the decision to get medication or test strips or feed your family, right? And so it's a real thing. It's a huge thing our country can do, and you know, it's obvious that it's beneficial for all people. And so I'm very in support of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Any other discussion? Okay, not seeing anyone else. So here's my comments on this. So first of all, I think I've been pretty public about this for the most part, as I'm not a huge resolution guy for the most part, and I've you know, made that public several times. You know, I very reluctant to get too much into kind of symbolic territory. I don't know if you want to call it symbolic, but territory where we pass resolutions and, you know, there's not a direct kind of an action that we can take to follow up on that. So that's one little piece. I have that out there, is that I want to be careful about the resolutions that come to us, you know, on top of all our regular meaningful business. And then as I look at any particular resolution, I have to say that one thing I measure resolutions on is that, is this a resolution that will have virtually zero effect on the outcome of whatever the thing is we're making a resolution about, but will have some effect to divide people here in Kalamazoo? And I think that's a detrimental thing if a resolution happens to fall in that category. And I've made that statement before when I've decided not to vote on a resolution. So there's those two things. Another thing I just want to say about this one is that although I will be voting in support of this resolution, I guess I want to say yes, but. You know, sometimes I'm saying yes and. Well, I'm going to say yes, but on this one, and that is this, is that my experience, my feeling about this is, I would say, a little broader than a particular bill that was just proposed in 2021, which has been dormant, and at least as it is now, doesn't have much of a chance of going anywhere, the Medicare for All. My thinking about this is that we need, you know, this is one avenue for that, but we need to come together and find a way that people can have health insurance. Everybody should be covered and not worried about how they're going to pay their medical bills or whether they can afford to go to the doctor. Is this particular, you know, branded bill the vehicle for it, the only vehicle for it? I don't know. I would like to think that maybe it isn't. Maybe there's other options to get to it, because the higher value, even above this particular proposal, is that we work to make sure that health care is available to everyone who lives here in our community in this country. So that all said, there's a couple particular things I just want to mention that are a little closer to home for us when it comes to Medicare, and that is this, that for Part A, the Medicare Trust Fund will be going into a deficit mode starting in 2023. Well, that's next year. And so that means that the trust fund will be spending more than it is accumulating. And at this point, the projection is that the trust fund will be zeroed out by 2028. So that means we're now in a situation where Medicare, as it currently exists, we don't have a plan for how we're going to keep that going. And keep it in mind that that is a current, very, very critical healthcare resource, which obviously serves people who are 65 and older in this country. And that is certainly a problem that's got to be solved, which I'd like to have some very direct focus on. And how does that particularly affect us here? Well, I think something like 10-12% of the residents of the city of Kalamazoo are recipients of Medicare, dependent on Medicare. That's very important for that 10,000 people who are right in our jurisdiction. And as a matter of fact, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,000 retirees from the city of Kalamazoo here, and about somewhere in the neighborhood, rounding off, 600 or so are in that category of, depending on Medicare for their health care as well, even though we might fund some gap on that. So there, all the more urgency to make sure that whatever happens, but in the short term coming up here, we need to have some serious conversations about what saving the Medicare we have looks like. And I guess the last thing I'll say on that is that none of us should imagine that that health care is somehow becomes free if it's a single-payer system. We have to agree, this is a cost that we're all going to bear, that one way or another. This is going to be a cost, whether it's in taxes, for sure, and what other components of that there might be. So that all said, I'll be voting in support of this, I guess, with that additional conversation. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pradel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Decker?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
And Commissioner Juarez?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The resolution is passed. At this time, it's an opportunity for Commissioner comments. Would like me to select who wants to go first, or does someone wants to jump in and volunteer? You're good, Commissioner?
I'm good, yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple things today. I definitely wanted to acknowledge everyone that came up and spoke with us regarding the social equity and the marijuana business plan, and also the connected streets, connected neighborhoods. I also wanted to thank Attorney Clyde and his team. I hear we have Mr. Cherry and Ms. Winslake that also assisted you on that, for updating our city ordinances. Some of those things I was reading in there were very, very outdated. So we appreciate you guys, you and your team, taking that time to update those. Regarding the social equity plan, I'm really excited to see what else is going to be brought forth to us in the coming weeks at a commission. Mainly, we have, as City Attorney Clyde told us, that the state requires them to do, or businesses to do, a social equity plan. And if it's something that the state requires, I think hopefully if we get this new person in staff, that they're really going to be able to take a look at that and kind of see how that flows, maybe even coming up with a template or a blueprint of one that we've seen that is just a good one that we can kind of show businesses that are coming into this space. And again, making it more equitable for everyone to see the same thing so everybody's on the same playing field when they come in and they put in those applications. I do think we do need to find a way to be able to somehow hold these businesses accountable for what they're saying in their social equity plan, especially if they're going to give it to the city or give it to the state, and then what they're going to give to us. Michigan News Agency, thank you for being around for so long. I do have to do a shout out because they're one of the businesses that has decided to carry a book that talks about home ownership, especially within low to moderate income families in the Black and Brown here in the city of Kalamazoo. So I definitely wanted to say thank you, Michigan News, for being around for that. Very big shout out to everyone that was on that subcommittee for the ARPA funds. County and the city, they worked together, they got it done. That's what it's all about, collaboration, working together. Excited for that. Definitely want to make sure we can find a way to make sure that everything that these organizations that have been selected by the subcommittee, I've read them all, the 5 organizations, that we can keep what they're doing sustainable moving forward. I think that's very important. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you, Kalamazoo.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Juarez?
Yeah. I just wanted to just reflect on some of the comments that were written in that that article, Second Wave Media, and just our efforts with, the rally against gun violence in the last 2 months. I think when I was speaking about us coming together, us needing each other, that's not just a comment that I just said just to be saying, but I think it's one of those comments where we need to actually really reflect and think about how much we need each other. Because it's one of those things where it's subconsciously we think about it and we're like, yeah, we need each other. Yeah, so what? Awesome, cool, yeah, right? Consciously, how do we make that work? How do we make that come to fruition? How does that manifest, right? And so I think that's one of those things where I would ask us as a commission to reflect that, is why do I need you and why do you need me? And actually share that throughout our week and throughout the month, with people. Because I think it's easily heard and talked about, but when it's shared is when the impact happens. When I can go throughout my day, throughout my week, and share with my kids or my coworkers or my colleagues or my congregation or the people that I come across and explain to them why I need them and why they need me, it changes things. And so for me, we've seen that take place and manifest at these rallies because it was different organizations coming together under one cause to raise awareness of gun violence, to combat against it, to get involved, to show the community there's people working on this, and to create that movement. And what we've seen from the first one we did to the last one we did on Saturday was that it kept growing. It kept getting bigger. And our hopes is that it just won't stop there, but it would continue. It would continue to grow and get bigger. And it will continue to make those long-lasting impacts, like that sustainability stuff that you're talking about, Commissioner Decker. Excited about that stuff. But if we can't even answer the question in our own minds why I need you and why you need me, it will be very difficult for us to see that transformation happen. And so I say this again, I need you. I need all of you.
Yeah. I was just going to pause for it to settle in, but yes, okay. Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Commissioner Hoffman?
I just want to echo what's been said. Today was one of those meetings where I feel I can go home. I won't have to decompress for 2 hours. Good things happen today. And as we continue to do this work and come back to the table, even when we're disagreeing or we don't always understand what our motivations are, as long as we know the end goal, if we all have the same mission for this community, and that's to have a beloved community where everybody feels safe, valued, and respected, not only in reference to gun violence, but with housing, with infant mortality, like all of these things are all interconnected. And that's what we have to continue to say and let people know. Everything is happening all at the same time, but we can have a huge ripple effect together. So I appreciate being up here with you guys. And Commissioner Juarez, you got me.
Commissioner Pradel.
I guess I was reflecting a little bit tonight, just throughout the different staff presentations. We had Deputy Director Antonio Mitchell presenting about social equity and some of the local businesses starting up. And, you know, we just had this rock star team get up and talk about the two-way traffic conversion, which gets us pretty motivated about the transformation happening. And Deputy City Manager Lamb and all the work that you've been being an anchor for gun violence and patient with the commission as we've gone through that process. And just how blessed I feel to be you know, part of an institution that just has literally the best and the brightest people you could ever ask for to do this work. Yeah, this is not easy, and it's hard to be a resilient enough person to wake up every single day when you get beaten down or you have discouraging days and wondering what the heck am I doing with myself. But when you know our road engineer can get up here and get us motivated about, you know, about our roads and how it's going to transform 2 highways speeding through our downtown and prevent isolation from 2 of our neighborhoods that have been for the last 50 plus years, like that's powerful. And I want to applaud the city team and everybody from the city who's been here tonight that are just working their tails off to try to make this vision happen. You know, Director Kick mentioned this about imagine the world as it could be. And I'm going to use that as a segue that just feels kind of incidental with everything that we're working on, because the last couple months have been the most motivating time I've been a part of this commission when you look at the youth work that we've been doing. But the reality is that I would not be here today except for just a incidental moment that I had as a young 10-year-old boy walking through Bronson Park. I stumbled upon a little rock that had a plaque on it that said, "Here in 1856, President Abraham Lincoln spoke." And it just blew my mind for some reason. I don't know why, but for some reason for me, not coming up from a lot of substance, something like switched in my head for a second where I'm like, wow, like little old Kalamazoo, like the second most written about human being on the planet, second to Jesus Christ, spoke here in the city of Kalamazoo before he was president. It's the only place in the entire state of Michigan that he ever spoke in. And not only did he speak here, but they lost what he said. And it wasn't until 1940 that they stumbled upon his speech in the back of a file cabinet and discovered that it was the first time that he actually very vocally, publicly spoke out against the ills and expansion of slavery. You know, it was the only time he left the state of Illinois in 1856, that entire year. He came here to Kalamazoo. And you have to wonder yourself, you know, what was it about his visit here that might have shaped his trajectory, his thoughts, his impact, and the way he thought about the world? Because we as human beings are always evolving, and he was an evolving, complex individual. But that is a gift that only the city of Kalamazoo can call that he spoke in this community. You know, when you look at that statue that's going to be in Bronson Park, he's going to be holding his speech up to his heart to emphasize the fact that that was true to his spirit, that he believed that every single human being deserved dignity and respect, and believed in every human being life, irregardless of who they were throughout his life. And you're also going to see his hand extended to motion, if you read his speech, because he says, come along with me on this journey, effectively, of equality. That's a message for us for years to come along with us on this quest for equality as a community. And then the other thing that's going to be special about that as well that you're going to notice is that when most people make statues of Lincoln, he's very monolithic, right? He's very godlike, they create. But we were very intentional that we asked that that statue be just kind of an everyday kind of average person kind of Lincoln, you know, a little bit unkept clothes, a little bit of crooked bow tie, and to be an authentic self, to represent that at the time he came here, he was relatively a nobody. You know, the Battle Creek newspaper even misspelled his name when he visited here. But he rose to become one of the most prominent and transformative figures in this country's history, if not the world. When I've traveled the country and I've traveled to other places around the globe, like, people know who he is. And he spoke here. And the two most consequential people that have spoken in the city of Kalamazoo, I would argue, are Martin Luther King Jr. and Abraham Lincoln. How fitting is that we can bestow that gift so when other people in the future, irregardless of what they look like or what their circumstances are, that they can stumble upon that piece of statuary in Bronson Park and question their place in this world and what impact they can have, and imagine the world that could be for them in this world. The statue is going to be more than just a statue. The group, when I got involved with it about 8 years ago, I was so excited because one of the things that they're trying to do is focus on education. And they wanted it to be very much about talking about difficult issues and how they fit into history and how that evolved to today. And so one of the things that you're going to see is we're going to start bringing an event here to Kalamazoo once every year or two to bring notable speakers of the time and have debates and conversation and bring notable people to the city of Kalamazoo so that we can be a convener of the issues of the day. So I'm incredibly excited about that prospect. I know he's not going to be a favorite of every single person, and I know there will be people who judge it, but for me, it was a transformative moment, and I would argue that I would not be here as a city commissioner today if I didn't have that moment. So I appreciate all of you for your vote tonight, and thank you for the community support as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Hess.
I get to go after all that. Okay, so tonight for me has been passion and collaboration. I've seen it in our community and on our dais here. First of all, last Wednesday, after we had passed the community sustainability plan, the passion that went into that, the collaboration that went into that. I attended the event at the Foundry, the Kalamazoo Energy Collaborative, where Consumers Energy is working with the city to try and benchmark and create an energy usage for all of our larger buildings in the city. We need to do that to know where we are so that we can find out where we want to go. So thanks to Consumers Energy for that, and that passion about sustainability. And if anybody has a larger building, a business, a larger building that you would like to do, we have that information available, how to benchmark those with Consumers Energy here at the city. Passion. Commissioner Pradel's passion about history fascinates me. This is not the first time I've heard about what moves him and what makes him tick, and it's fascinating to me. So his passion, and then his collaboration in working with the Abraham Lincoln Institute is unique. It's just unique, and this statue can be a vision for what we want for Kalamazoo moving forward. And honestly, it's not lost on me that Abraham Lincoln was indeed himself a victim of gun violence. I want to thank Planet CPED and Public Services for that amazing presentation, for their collaboration on working with what is going to make our city sane in our streets, and for our pedestrians and for our non-motor vehicle traffic in this town. So thank you on that and for your passion and collaboration. It's going to take a lot for this city to be collaborative to make those outcomes happen. We have to work together. And then really gratitude to the Gun Violence Committee for working on an amazing solution and where to put money to make differences, just like we did with the youth development money. So gratitude for you, for your passion and for your collaboration and working with others. And so I would like to finish with something, I heard a quote by Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was responding to the shooting yesterday. And I want to read this because it really does talk about passion and the passion for where we have to go about gun violence. She said, "Gun violence does not respect geographic boundaries or socioeconomic differences. It is a plague that affects us all. Whether it is back of the yards, Englewood, West Garfield Park, Uvalde, Buffalo, or now Highland Park, none of us are immune, and all are vulnerable without a federal effort to take weapons of war out of the hands of civilians. It can be done. It must be done, and we must continue to move forward toward that goal with all deliberate speed. We cannot be truly free unless we are relentlessly brave." Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Brother Vice Mayor.
First of all, I want to thank Laura Lamb for the tremendous work that she did in helping us get this far and help us move further. So thank you, Laura, for that. So yesterday was the 4th of July, and I don't like the 4th of July because I don't like a lot of the things this country does. But I was reading that Frederick Douglass and the abolitionists celebrated the 5th of July. They didn't give up on the country, but they wanted the country to live up to its ideals. And we were talking earlier a lot, and thanks, Chris, for sharing that with us, about Lincoln. And I think about the Gettysburg Address, when at the end of it he said, in the middle of the war, when things were really bad, that his hope was that this nation would have under God, would have a new birth of freedom. And that nation of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And I think about Martin Luther King and the speech that he gave on April the 4th, 1967, when he spoke against the war in Vietnam. And I think about how King saw all those things that were wrong with this country, but didn't give up on the country and kept calling the country back to its ideals. And I kind of think that's what we're about up here. We want to make this a city where this country lives up to its ideals. That's our passion, and that's our challenge. And I think that's what we're all going to give ourselves to.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I just want to say simply, I appreciate you all as human beings, everyone I'm with up here, and as colleagues. It's a pleasure serving with you. It adds all kinds of meaning to a life, and it's a blessing indeed. So thank you. Now, the final item on our agenda is a closed session to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Juarez.
Support.
Is that a yes, but yes? Supported by Vice Mayor Cooney. Attorney Robinson, will we need to return to open session to take action?
No.
No, we will not. So do we actually adjourn then before we go into closed session, or how does that work?
Yes. Go into closed session, then you may adjourn the meeting.
Okay. So there's been a motion made to go into closed session. Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion to go in closed session passes. I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.